Howdy, howdy, y'all. Welcome back to some Antics. I know it's a very unusual time, perhaps, for a semantic stream, but the other night I saw this tweet by Zach Leatherman about a feature that's been coming to Eleventy for a while called Eleventy Serverless, and I just really wanted to get my hands on this and try it. And I figured it would be a good opportunity to just kind of go through that first look, if you will, live. Just kind of see what we can learn, see if there's anything I'm missing. Um, I did, full disclaimer, I did play around with this just a little bit last night, just mainly to make sure I could get things running. But by and large, I haven't really explored a whole lot about this, so I'm super excited for this. Um, and I'm super excited to have y'all here as well. I see so far we've got Steph in the chat, we've got Glorious Loaf. Thank you both for being here. If you're in the chat, go ahead and just put a wave or say hi. I'd love to see who all was able to make it out. Um, yeah, so Eleventy serverless. Actually, first of all, what is y'all's comfort level with Eleventy? I imagine the kinds of people who would hop on to a 5 p.m. on Friday stream talking about Eleventy, I imagine that's probably going to be a pretty self-selecting group. So chances, oh, hello. All right, well, just a sec, y'all. Hang on. Hey, Zach, you there? Howdy.
Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Just a sec. I. All right, I'm gonna actually. I'm currently only showing my face. Let me fix that to include you as well. Howdy. It's good to meet you.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going all right. I figured I would show. There's this guy named Zach, and he had this tweet that seemed pretty cool, so I figured I'd show it off. I guess since you're here, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Zach. I'm the creator of Eleventy.
Yeah. So I tweeted out earlier today that like, oh, I want to play around with this on stream, get kind of a first look. And Zach, you stepped into the trap of replying, being like, wow, it's cool that you can get feedback. And I'm like, would you like to hop on and join me for this? So I'm super grateful that that you've come on. This is awesome. Um, yeah. So as I understand it, Eleventy serverless is a way to keep you from having to build all of your pages in one go, like in the build step, and instead let you build them really when you need them. So the first time someone hits the page, for instance.
Yep, that's right. It's kind of like I don't know, the way I think about it is that it's kind of a way to manually segment your builds. So you can sort of create this separation, if you will, like from your upfront build step
Okay.
and delay some pages to be rendered later, either on every request or using on-demand builders, which is Netlify's new thing, where it renders it one time and then caches that for repeat views.
This docs. Yeah. So I this is actually something I'm kind of curious about because it seems like if you didn't cache the builds, the 11D serverless builds, it seems like you could have something fairly dynamic in real time. Like you could almost make a pretty dynamic feed if you wanted, where every time someone came to the page, it would show the latest stuff.
Yeah, correct. So the trade-off is there's a couple of trade-offs when it comes to this, and you're kind of managing these three different modes, right? This on-demand builder, this on-request model where it renders it every time to make like a fully dynamic page, and then the third is like the classic build upfront build mode.
Okay.
And the trade-off is when you're running Eleventy serverless, it's going to be slower than your upfront build. Like if you're doing all the work in your build up front, the visitor experience will be much faster because you're just serving static files at that point. When you get into the serverless model, it's actually running the render. It's running Eleventy on request. So it is going to be slower. So it takes more. It takes a little bit more care to do it this way because, I mean, the Eleventy is only as fast as the slowest thing that you put into it, right? So you could get into a trap where you could create really slow pages with this model. And so you need to be really careful if you're doing, especially if you're doing on every request, not to put too much into your build. Otherwise, your pages can get slow. And so that's sort of where the on-demand builders come in, because if you're generating just once for every visitor, that sort of mitigates that risk in a much nicer way. Because even if you have a slow build for the first user, it will be fast for everyone, like everyone else that visits.
Gotcha. So that would be a way to be like, I know that there are a ton of pages I would, in theory, like given infinite time, I could generate, but I don't need to build all of these from the start. But the moment like the first person needs it, we can go ahead and build it and then just hold on to that for however long our cache lives. And so you only build the stuff that people actually hit.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
And so we actually implemented this on eleventy.dev too.
Yeah.
For the author pages are using on-demand builders. And actually, I put up a proof of concept today. If you go to the Eleventy homepage where I'm running the homepage using Eleventy Serverless in an on-request model, so like that higher risk mode where things could get slow. So this is every visit that comes to this page is running Eleventy on request.
Wow.
Returning the content there. So yeah, you can see this is all server generated HTML. So this date here comes back in the server generated HTML.
That is excellent. And I love, I guess the promise of this seems to be like, for the most part, you can keep doing your static site generated stuff, but it's like just for a handful of things that you don't necessarily need to build in the build step. You can just hold on to that later. So it's this hybrid model, like you said, of balancing everything. Wow, we've got pretty great chat going. I see we've got Joe, we've got Travis, Henri Helvetica is in. Excellent. Alex Trost, lots of good peeps. Welcome. I'm so glad everyone was able to come on Friday evening. That's awesome. It's 5 p.m. for you as well, right?
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, my wife took over watching the kids for a little bit, so I could join this. So
oh my god!
Props to her too.
Oh man, yeah. Kudos to Zach's wife. Excellent. Yeah. So I wanted to go through. You've got the serverless docs here, and I'll put that in the chat here as well. So a while back, Jason did on his stream a demo of Netlify's distributed persistent rendering model. And he built out a site that was like just a demonstration of like every color. So you could go to like see like a different CSS color. And I was thinking it might be fun to follow the docs and to try to build something like this, but instead, because I typically do like accessibility streaming, do a color contrast checker where in theory I could hit for instance, like if I say like FF000, there we go, and then like 000FF, right? Then it would spit out the contrast ratio. So that's what I wanted to try to build using this, because that's the kind of thing where it's like we don't really need to serve a whole bunch of JS to the end user, but I also don't want to build all of these pages because one color is 26 by 26 by 26 combinations. Two colors is God, that's 20, like two, sorry, I said 26, I mean 256. So two colors would be 256 to the power of 6, if I'm mathing correctly.
Yep, that's a lot of colors.
But that's too many colors. And, you know, it's not like this color contrast site is going to be the most traffic page. Absolutely not worth spending all that time on my build. Can you imagine, like, the dev server mode of just having to rebuild 256 to the power of 6 pages? Actually, how much is that? That's exorbitant, isn't it? Too high. 2.8 times 10 to the 14th. Too many pages. All right. That seems like that would be something that would be pretty feasible with serverless.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. So I did spin up. I wanted to start pretty fresh. So there we go. So I did create just a package JSON and I get ignore. So this is in the canary builds, which I guess I could get to with if I find y'all's GitHub. And tags. There we go. That looks doable. And just install Eleventy here. It doesn't matter whether it's a dev build or anything like that. That's sorry, dev dependency. That's fine. All right. Joe's saying that he's throwing away his manually built color contrast repository that has been passed down through generations of his family. This was my grandfather's color contrast. Oh my god.
All the pages were built manually by hand.
Travis says this better be deployed as a tool for us later. You bet. Yeah, Zach, I'm sure you're familiar with Netlify. We could probably make this work on Netlify if I had to guess.
I've heard of that, yeah.
You've heard of it.
I heard they have a nice homepage too.
Did you make the homepage?
Yeah, I work on the homepage with Hughes Tenier. Yeah.
Gotcha. Colored by hand too. Yes. All right. So we've got. Why did I just have VS Code up already? Let me nuke that. There we go. And I guess just speed run the creating a config because I'm just gonna go ahead module that. Woo! My computer is lagging. It is not used to this. No, I want function format. I think I want function format. And nope. But I'm just gonna make a source here. And source, I suppose I can probably make. I think I'm just gonna use an HTML template for this. I think would make sense. There we go. All right. So there's that. That would be the bare contrast. Be a little clearer. There we go. So this would be like one. This would represent every page that would have a color contrast check there. Yeah. So I guess if I go to the docs here, which is there we go. So we're gonna add the bundler plugin. So this is something I'm curious about. Why is this a plugin? Why is this not something that would be like built into the like default config?
Yeah, so there's a gray area here because the plugin is bundled with Eleventy Core, but it isn't available by default. So what this bundler plugin does is it actually creates a serverless like bundle for you. So it copies a lot of your template files and some of your like includes and basically all the files that you need to build your site into this serverless bundle for deployment.
Okay.
As sort of like a separate package. So it can run the build independently on request in a Lambda, basically. So I don't necessarily want this to be like something that people just reach for without thinking. I want it to be sort of something that you have to take a few steps to use, just because there are a few caveats, and we've discussed a few of them on the call just around performance of on-request builds. But there are some other like developer experience caveats that we might go into a little bit later. Things that might get smoothed out as we go along, but things that also might be unexpected for people. So I wouldn't necessarily like want people to build entire sites with this. It should be something that you reach for because you have a specific need for it.
Okay.
And I think the use case you proposed is definitely a good one.
Mm-hmm. We've actually got a question already in the chat from Stephanie Eccles. Can serverless pick up collections now? She says it wasn't for her way too early test, but yeah.
Yeah, so that will require some documentation and discussion. So I would say that is a complicated answer. Okay. It does more than it used to. And it probably will more as time goes on. But it is sort of a wall between your build and your on request serverless templates. So there are ways to inject collections from your build into your serverless templates. And I do that on eleventy.dev because all the navigation is driven by a collection.
Gotcha.
And there are ways to do it the other way too, to consume serverless templates inside of your build as collections. But yes, that's the most complicated question. Maybe we shouldn't start out with that one.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I'm just trying to think of the ramifications of a thing that's built at build time consuming collections that involve serverless stuff. That seems tricky.
Yeah, yep, it is. And the docs will get a little bit better as time goes on around that stuff.
Yeah,
I don't think that I've even put examples into that yet.
Oh, look at that.
Sort of hiding at the bottom.
Documentation in progress. All right.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, cool. So then, I want this plugin. That plugin seems excellent. So I'm gonna take it. We're gonna use it. Where is my here? I updated to Big Sur recently, and like all the icons have changed, and I have far too many of them down there as is. So it's like hard to immediately find VS Code.
All right. Yeah, I haven't upgraded yet.
So I'm excited now already though for Monterey. Monterey? Yep, Monterey. Because it's gonna have things like being able to select text directly out of images, which I think is gonna be a huge win for accessibility.
Yeah, it'd be nice when I forget to or when I copy and paste an image into Twitter and then forget to copy the text for the source. If I could just copy that right out of the image, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Especially for like code snippets. Okay. So Eleventy config add plugin, Eleventy serverless bundler plugin, and then so I did sneak a peek at these docs the other day, and I do have to say I genuinely appreciate that you named this possum, because I think like even though you give this disclaimer like later that it's like you should probably call this serverless, like I feel like that would become the magic word that I don't know when I should call something serverless versus when I should call something this. So I do.
Yeah, I felt like that was too generic of a word to use as an example.
See if I can make that just a little bit bigger. Okay. Did open up an object? Yeah. All right. So if this is the name of my serverless function, then I'm probably going to end up calling my function contrast instead of that. And functions.
I think the interesting thing here is that, so yeah, I'm already anticipating feedback about this, but just I feel like when it comes to the serverless bundler plugins, you're really only going to need one for each mode. So you'll be able to drive all of your templates through either that on request mode or the on demand builder mode.
Oh,
and so really at most you're only going to need probably two. So the name really shouldn't be specific to your use case, but rather the mode that you're running it through.
Oh, okay. So if I called this something like, maybe we call it on demand, just to differentiate it from the magic word serverless. Interesting.
Yeah, I'll write that down as something that I can improve on the docs.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So, got tons of options here.
One you're going to need, I can already tell up front, is that input dir, since you don't have a default. I wish there was a better way for me to pick that up in the config, but yeah.
You can't pick it up from this object because that's, I guess, after the plugin's been installed. Interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Sure. And this is going to be short. Okay. Interesting.
So you're actually the first person I've seen try this out.
Oh
So I'm like
man.
getting
Oh,
feedback. I'm getting
okay.
feedback from you right now.
All right.
That's that's kind of my secret reason for joining, is that I wanted to watch someone try it out.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I will I guess attempt to run into as many stumbling blocks as I possibly can.
And then I
Um,
can fix them upstream for everyone else.
all right. Let's see. I don't think I'm gonna need any of this other stuff. You didn't seem to think I would need any of this either.
Nope, I
So
don't think so.
I think you're already getting slightly dunked on in the chat for making me type out input directory like a caveman.
Sorry.
Zach, I thought Eleventy was supposed to let me move fast. I mean, how am I going to move fast if I have to type out the input directory?
Yep. 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 Nope. No comment.
Okay. So the next thing I'm seeing, it immediately describes my generated serverless function. I don't think I have a generated serverless function.
Yep. So when you run the build the first time, it's better.
Would you like me to like, oh God, not layout, includes, do you want me to like copy paste these logs into anything for you?
No, I'm taking notes.
Okay, cool, 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 cool. All right. So if I have my data in my includes, now I'm curious why that would be required in the first place. What I'm wondering. Well, I guess that makes sense. If you're not
It
not
shouldn't be.
okay.
Yeah. So we basically recreate your folder structure inside of this
Uh,
serverless bundle, basically. So yeah, it shouldn't expect those to exist.
gotcha. All right. So I now have a netlify directory with the functions directory on demand because that's what we called it in my package JSON instead of Possum or serverless. It's got a source. Okay, so it's following. Wait, why would it have a source if I told it my input directory was source? Shouldn't it be starting from?
No. So it's recreating basically your
Oh, okay,
template structure inside of that serverless bundle.
including with the source. Got it. Okay, I
Correct.
guess I had just assumed that if I had said that it was source, then it would stick it inside, or I guess it would just show me what was inside source. But okay, so we've got empty data, empty includes, and then I see a few things. We're requiring 11D. This one's empty.
Yep. So this is a way to work around. There's actually a lot that goes into bundling a serverless function.
Okay.
And these files are a way to sort of declaratively say, these are the dependencies that I'm using inside of my configuration file and inside of my global data. Since Eleventy basically requires those dynamically, they aren't exposed to the bundler. So we have like the bundler basically doesn't have insight into those because we require those with like variable arguments passed in.
Gotcha. Empty object
So yeah, a
here.
lot of this stuff's going to be empty.
Okay, this is a copy of my .11d.js, which is in 11d 1.0. You're gonna recommend people start calling this 11d.config.js anyways? No?
I mean, no, we'll have an option.
Okay.
I think we'll look and pick up for that file by default, but that isn't included yet.
Got it. And then there's this thing, which seems to have quite a bit of other meat. This is what actually is responding to the incoming GET requests and returning the major.
Yeah, so this is the only file inside of this serverless bundle that you need to worry about. This is the only file that you're like managing. And the bottom of this is the really important part. So by default, this is set up to do just an on request model.
Okay.
Because the on-demand builders require an additional dependency. So if you want to swap to use on-demand builders, you need to uncomment these two lines and then npm install that dependency.
So for the use case that we're building, which is a color contrast checker, would you recommend we do that as on-demand builders? Is that
Yeah, I would
Okay.
because I feel like that, and this is probably something that I'm going to change eventually, but it didn't feel right having a Netlify dependency uh, as the default use case.
Mhm.
So that's why you have to opt into that. Although
Understand.
I would prefer 9 times out of 10 that people use the on-demand builders just because the visitor experience is going to be better if you do
Yeah.
that.
Because yeah, the only time I can think of you would really need to do it like this way is if you absolutely need like the real time, um, like fetching data or something like that. That needs to
Yeah,
be. Uh,
truly dynamic use cases. Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna go ahead and install Netlify functions. What did I? Okay, I'm using npm. Got it. So npm install Netlify functions. All right. Cool. So I have that now. And yeah, this is telling me, hey, just yeah, here's how you would swap this out if you wanted to let Netlify cache your build pages. Okay. Add to get ignore. So we're gonna ignore all of the generated stuff except for the index because I'm guessing this stuff gets built for us as part of the like build step in Netlify or other similar services. So
Yep, correct.
cool.
And the reason I want to let people sort of manage the serverless function code is that there'll be a whole ton of use cases that might fall out that I don't want to have to manage. So I,
Okay.
if people want to get creative with it, I want that
Hmm.
opportunity to be available to them.
Gotcha. Something is slowing my computer down. Interesting. Yeah, so I've got this, and if I peek in, yeah, so just the index.js screen. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and, I guess, commit what I've got. Make sure there's nothing bad in there. All right, there we go. Cool, so it's committed. So I guess at this point, it's telling me I can go ahead and start creating my pages.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, just digging that a little. I will make it liquid eventually, or nunjucks or something, but I just want to get this
I
handled.
mean, Eleventy by default does pre-process HTML files as liquid, so
Yeah,
you
sorry,
do get that for.
I meant for editor syntax highlighting purposes. Because
Oh,
I had
okay,
it,
yeah,
I had it on default as HTML liquid, but I wanted to be able to use my HTML snippets. Yeah. Okay. So
nice.
yeah, stick a little main in here. Main's probably gonna have an H1, so I can imagine if we're passing in hex codes through the URL, I can imagine that at some point the structure I would like to see is something like color one, and maybe I won't make these H1s at this moment. I'll make them like paragraph tags, but um, color one and color two have a ratio. We could probably make this way prettier, give it more information, maybe even with time split it up into like all the different like WCAG requirements because there's like four of them that you have to keep in mind. But um, for now, at least just to prove out the Eleventy serverless stuff, I think this is probably the minimal case. So all right, I'm gonna I guess give me some metadata here and some front matter. And then, okay, so instead of using the string permalink, you now have a permalink object. This won't be Possum, this will be on demand. And we can give it some path.
Yeah, I would skip down. There's a slug example closer to the bottom.
Okay, that's this, and that's using the colon syntax that's familiar for like anyone who's ever used like Express. So that makes sense to me. So I could do something like permalink on demand. And I can call this. Okay, I guess URL opinion times. Is this how you would do this, or would you have like other like steps along the way? Like, would you do something like color one slash and then the dynamic thing, then slash like color two? Is that something you have an opinion on?
I mean, I don't feel too strongly about it. I feel like the shorter URL makes more sense to me. But you do want to use the colon syntax here and
Oh,
not the, I mean,
oh, you're
you
yes, yes.
you can use templating syntax in this, just like a normal
Mm-hmm.
permalink. If you want to dynamically generate your slug names, so that's still supported, but I don't think that's what you want here.
Oh, oh my God, that is an almost horrifying idea. Is dynamically generated slug names. Interesting. I'll have to think about how I can utterly break things with that. Um, okay, but I think this should be good. Is there anything else over here that I need? Um,
No, that should be it, I think.
okay.
Well, wait. So you have your slug set up in your permalink.
Yes.
Eleventy doesn't populate the values of those into the top level global data.
Okay. Yeah.
It actually gets populated into Eleventy serverless object.
And it's calling this ID because that's what the slug was. So does that mean I can do 11d.serverless.path.color1 anytime I
Yep.
need to in my templates?
Yeah.
All right. Let's.
In a serverless template. That object won't be available on your build template.
Serverless dot path dot color one or dot color two. We'll figure out the ratio thing. This is probably with that. This might be a use case for computed data, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And the reason we have path there is because you can actually get query parameter values inside of this as well.
Oh, interesting. I don't know that this particular site would have a use case for query parameters, but it's good to know that you can get those. So would that be dot params or something like that instead of
I
dot
think
path?
it's .query.
Dot query. Okay, is that in here? I'm just gonna do a quick work. Um, let's see. Okay, so I think I can see how this translates to the 11d.serverless. But if you hadn't just told me I could do that query, I don't think I would have been able to guess that
Yep,
that's
that's not in the docs. And there's kind of one, the main reason for that is query parameters are really only available right now in the on request model, not in an on-demand builder. So one limitation of Netlify's on-demand builders is that it ignores query parameters. So just to maintain the uniqueness of URLs,
Okay.
It doesn't use those to calculate query parameters. And additionally, the Netlify functions npm package that you installed will actually strip those, so they aren't even available under this query string parameters. So yeah, it's really only available for that on request mode that we talked about.
Okay. So with that, obviously, like I'm not populating my ratio variable here, but with that, I think everything else, I should just be able to run this and immediately start hitting colors, right?
Yep. Yep.
All right.
Hopefully.
Finger
Live demo.
crossed.
All right. Yeah. So that's good. It wrote 0 files. We didn't want to build any files.
That's good. Yeah, because we didn't have any non-serverless stuff. This is fine because that's the home page. We aren't expecting anything there. Instead, we're expecting. I can put anything in here now. I'm not doing any sort of validation, so I'll say 11d/possum. Nice. Okay, and this was just built for us right now. If I open up the terminal, yeah, serverless. Here's my on-demand function /11d/possum. Excellent. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
I don't know. That took a little bit of work to get going because this is actually browser sync middleware that's running your serverless function for you. So anyway,
Gotcha.
that's behind the scenes stuff.
Nice. I mean, that's really cool. I'd love to take a look at that at some point. Just kind of see
I mean,
how that's working.
yeah, the reason I implemented it that way is because I didn't want an additional dependency to be able to look at these things locally. You can use Netlify Dev to have a more like authentic serverless function experience if you want, but I did want it more like, I don't know how to say, like packaged in, so you don't have to install another dependency to do that.
Plus, not everyone's going to be using Netlify to host their Eleventy sites, right? So
Right, exactly.
yeah, that totally makes sense. That's awesome. So if I try to break things and go to /Eleventy, it's gonna complain at me. That's cool. Possum / on demand, maybe. Okay, so it is very strictly if I've got 2 steps along this path. Very cool.
Yeah, and you can set up some of those to be optional, although I don't know how bulletproof that is right now.
Okay.
But you can also add additional paths inside of your template. That supports an array of paths too. So if you just wanted to use color 1 and have that redirect to the same template, you can do that.
Okay, so that, I'm guessing if it's YAML, then that means I need an array, right? So would it be like...
Yeah. Exactly.
That? Okay, so if I were to do that, we come back here, and then just say /Eleventy/.
Did that work?
What's it yelling about here? And it's probably a YAML syntax issue.
Oh yeah, I would put quotes around that.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Ooh. There we go. Let's see if that works. Reloading browsers, it might yell at me. Why is... Interesting.
I can test this later.
Yeah.
We'll go through that later.
Let's do that later.
You may have found another bug.
Perhaps. It is the syntax, right? Like you go ahead and start as though you're starting like an object, right? Like you have your key, you have your colon, and then I have hyphens here. Everything's indented with 2 spaces because YAML is a monster.
I would have expected that to work. I usually use double quotes there, but
oh, maybe. Oh no, I'll give it a try real quick, but if that doesn't work out, that's fine. We'll just, pivot back to building a color contrast checker.
The other thing
what's up?
Yeah. I mean, the only other thought I had was that it might be a configuration reload problem.
Oh, it could be. Yeah, I mean,
Although,
like it's specifically saying like YAML. I don't know. Anyways, I think I'm gonna go ahead and bring this back to being just our color 1, color 2 slugs. Just return to the excellent world of both Eleventy and possums. All right. Cool. So I guess the next thing is I wanna get that ratio working. So I don't know. Oh, yeah, that's what we were doing.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing you can try that doesn't necessarily fix the bug that you may have just uncovered, but if you go to that URL-pattern npm package, it's linked a little bit higher.
URL-pattern, got it.
There is some syntax in there for optional slugs. And I think it's like just parentheses around the slug.
I want to search for parentheses, but I know I can't because that's just going to match me every function call in here. Optional segments.
There you go. Optional segments.
That's like a whole regex in there. Okay, got it. Interesting. Interesting. I think that's worth playing around with another time, perhaps, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, cool. I do have a hard stop in like 15 minutes.
Okay. Cool. I will make sure you have that hard stop. So I would like to do I guess some computed data, and this is I'm I'm probably gonna like find a color contrast npm package and run some JavaScript. So I would think to do that, I would want to create a JavaScript data file for my contrast template. Data. I don't actually tend to work in JavaScript data files a whole lot, so um, I prefer to stick to like JSON where possible. So, all right, let's find me
Yeah, I
a.
mean,
Oh, go ahead.
I feel like I don't know. My first thought was to use like this a generic color contrast npm package,
Mm-hmm.
and then add it as like a filter. And then we
Oh,
can just call that filter.
oh, interesting. Okay, got it. Well, this looks like it could work for our purposes, especially if we're just saying hex codes, right? For future state, we can include named colors, but because at some point I'm gonna need to, check tomato against everything. Um, but okay, let me build. Let me install this helpful color contrast library. All right. I think I'm gonna have to like manually add this as like wrap around this because I think I'm gonna have to manually add the hashes. I don't think the browser's gonna support those. So, all right. Okay.
And another thing you can do is drive these values from, I mean, your color one and your color two, you could drive those from computed data too, if you wanted to simplify that inside your template. So you could say like
Oh,
11D computed and then color one and then use pound and then that big
oh,
long slug
I
thing.
like that. All right, let's do it that way. Okay. So 11D computed. I can do this in here. And then I can say color one, and this is pound, and then 11D dot serverless, spell it correctly, path color one. The
I
fact that I've
would,
got
yeah, put quotes around that just to be safe.
yeah, you got it. All right, and then color two is the same way. And so now that I've got these as strings with a pound sign before the rest of the hex code, um, I can go ahead in here. I could say const color contrast equals require contrast 11D config dot add filter contrast color contrast. And so if I'm doing that, you can use filters in your 11T computed, right?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay, well, let's put that to the test. Because I want to just go ahead and say ratio in here instead of the
Oh,
maybe.
yeah, let's try it. Let's try it. I
God,
love it.
I have to remember the order for this. I'm not the best with nunchucks and liquid. Um, I have to provide it a value first, I think, right? So I have to say like color one, and then I think
Mm.
it's pipe, and then color contrast, which is the name of my filter, and then it's colon, I think, to pass in remaining
Oh,
arguments. Or is it
yeah, for liquid, I do not remember. It's definitely parentheses for nunchucks, but let me look.
and liquid is the default way of interpreting HTML templates. So okay, I think it's colon. I want to say it's colon.
Yep, you're right. It's colon.
I get to keep my 11D nerd card for just a little longer. All
I
right,
don't have
what's up?
I don't have the Twitch chat open, but
Oh,
that's the link to the docs where the
yeah, let me stick that in the chat as well. Um, there we go. Docs. Um, but why read the docs when you have Zach here? Just get your friendly neighborhood Zach to hop on.
I read the docs.
um, All right. So now that that's going, we've got an 11 computed ratio value. Um,
You still might want quotes around this. I'm just like YAML
okay. Sure
quotes
thing.
around everything.
All right. Save this. Um, uh, Travis says Zach will be available on demand, and I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. On-demand builders, Zach will build your site on demand. Pretty sure.
I will read the docs to you.
Maybe it would help if I use the proper script. That. Ooh,
Oh
foreground.alpha
yeah.
is not a function. Oh, what have I, what have I done? Oh, let me put the logs back there. Foreground.alpha is not a function.
Uh, my first thought is because you're inside of your add filter, you're just passing the entire function wholesale.
Okay.
If you go back to your Eleventy config,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that there might be some secret arguments here that we don't want.
Oh. Yeah. We'll just
Yep.
hack away at that. God, there was someone who had a pretty good article recently about like not using generic functions as callbacks, but instead like always doing a
Jake
special.
Archibald.
Jake
Yeah.
Archibald, that one was so good. Let me find it real quick and put that in the chat just because um it's very rarely that I read an article that like really seriously like makes like a compelling like mind changing argument for me on these kinds of things. But like this one, I read it. It was like I will never go back. This is excellent. Okay.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yes. All right. So now that I've got that, npm run dev. We'll see if this is working. Oh, but now did I save this right? Yeah. Let me swing back and get this. It's not happy with this. Um, I almost want to log color 1 and color 2 and make sure that those are working right as well. Let's try that. Right, so I'm gonna come in here and color 1 log, color 2 log. All right. See if we can find us our colors. Did I save this? Yes, I saved it. Should really swing back and forth less. Oh, okay, here's a
Yeah,
question. Why is it trying to render my template if I don't have any, like, if it's all on demand, right? If I don't have any, right? Like, it shouldn't be hitting this at all right now. It would be my thought, right? Because we haven't actually tried to hit the page.
yes and no. So when you have serverless templates, we need to parse the front matter to know if it's a serverless template.
Makes sense.
And so you might be right in that we should not be computing Eleventy computed data in this, but we do need computed data to drive the permalink in some cases.
Interesting.
I would try and comment out that ratio and see if it builds.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
I don't think you can do it that way though.
Yeah, my editor was being helpful in the wrong way. So let's just try.
Yeah, mine does that all the time.
All right. npm run dev. Okay, so was happy with that. If I go back to our page here, should log pound 11 pound possum. Okay, so it is getting that just fine. And had these been colors, it would have passed that down. Had these been hex code, it would have passed that down. I'm thinking we just maybe have a bad color contrast function, or one that's not quite working in a filter format.
actually think that you may have encountered a computed data bug.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my assumption whenever I see an error is that it's something that I did.
Oh, fair.
So I'm
Fair.
thinking all of the things that it could be inside of Eleventy specifically. And my guess is that when we try to determine the correct order in which to generate Eleventy computed values,
Okay.
when they are strings, we use this like two pass method, and the first pass, excuse me, tries to run those without values or with empty values.
Oh. Wait, okay, so then what we could try is if I go in here and I say instead of trying to handle my ratio as computed, I'm interested
Yeah, I
to
would expect
try
this to work.
color contrast and pass it color 2. All of that should work.
The other thing I would expect to work is that if this was a function computed data instead of a string, it would probably work too.
Okay. So if we were to
String
do this like
computed
in
datas are a little bit riskier. Sorry.
if we were to do this inside the eleventydata.js file there. Wait. Oh, hello. Wait. Hang on, let me foreground out is not a function. But what if I try anyways to hit an actual set of colors? Try the happy path. Oh, okay. So that is working. And I'm guessing it was working when it was in the computed data as well. It's just that, yeah.
Well, I think we ran into the same bug in two different ways, right? Once inside of the Eleventy computed data, where it tried to run that color contrast on basically empty values, and then again this time when we tried to run it on those two on Possum and Eleventy strings that weren't valid colors.
Yeah. Okay, so probably it was getting undefined, or I guess it was getting like hash, undefined, and it's like these aren't colors. That's not how colors work. Okay. Um, it is, I guess, as an 11D consumer, still a little weird to me that it would be like trying to process some of those computed properties when, by the nature of being on demand, it wouldn't have those values. So I guess I'm finding that a little surprising, and I'd be super curious to see if there's a workaround, because my assumption was definitely like either I had done something wrong or my filters were wrong in some way, or it's like no, it's just trying to run things that it doesn't have access to yet because it's not going to have access until it's run on demand.
Yeah, I mean the weird part of this is that as I mentioned earlier, you can use Eleventy computed to drive your permalink. So values inside of your Eleventy computed can be injected into your permalink value to generate those dynamic URLs or not, those values for you. Now I bet I could fix this or at least mitigate it in a better way.
Okay.
And that if you don't have template syntax in your permalink, then it wouldn't try to do this. I bet I could work around that in a nicer way.
If you end up doing that, would you mind reaching out to me and letting me know? Because I'd love to see what the fix was.
Okay, yeah.
Cool.
I'll make a note of it.
I'm gonna actually bring this back to being computed properties, because I think this will work when I try to hit a page that I actually that uses actual colors. So I'm gonna try to bring this back, wrap this in quotes, and we'll just see if it really works. So I've got this, refresh, and then I want to try on just all new colors that I haven't tested with, just to make sure. So I'm gonna try on black and white, maybe with a trailing slash. Okay, so this is working. It's working as computed. It's just that initial pass, when it's in the build step, it's not quite working. I wonder.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
So,
Uh,
I'm sorry, go
no,
ahead.
try and run it again. Start it over and see if that works.
Okay. Let's try. Yeah, it's not happy about foreground alpha.
Okay.
Um, all right. I'm wondering if the fact that it's not happy with this, if this would keep me from like deploying on Netlify.
Yes, this would fail.
Okay,
This error would fail your build.
got it.
Um, yeah. So I mean, you could just move that to be a function inside of your Eleventy data file,
Yeah, let's do that.
and I would expect that to work.
Yeah. Okay, so 11T. I'm just gonna
The
take.
one other thing I did want to mention before we move on too far is that when you're doing on-demand builders locally, they operate the same as on request.
Okay,
So they're not going to cache locally for you.
gotcha.
And that's just true of how the development experience of the Nullify functions package works.
Makes sense. All right, so I would expect to do return color contrast, color 1, color 2. I could probably do some mitigation stuff in here, right? Like if, let's see, if color 1 is a string, if color 1 dot includes the string undefined, I could return null, right?
I really feel like the easiest way to fix this is just going to be have some default. So go down to your filter and add some default colors.
Oh, okay, yeah. So just say by default we're gonna have white and no, that's black. I just did. I promise I know colors. Okay, gotcha. Just,
And so when computed data will run through this, you'll get these default colors, but it won't actually affect the what's generated in your output.
gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, that's confusing and annoying, but hopefully I can make it work better in the future.
Yeah.
Well, okay, maybe not.
Let me make sure I saved. I saved. Interesting.
Can you go back to your template file?
Sure can. And is it? Yeah. Let me real quickly. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just make this a full explicit function here. And I'm just really curious here. Console.log A and B. I'm gonna stick a possum in there so it's easier to search. npm run build. What? That's
Yep. So that's how the string data inside of Eleventy computed works.
oh, that's incredible.
And this is yeah. So this is how we try and find the order to properly calculate these.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a dirty hack, but it works with every templating language.
That's so good. Oh, this makes me actually genuinely happy. But also,
but also it's breaking your color contrast.
Yeah.
Because it's passing these like bad strings in.
yeah. Oh, interesting.
Let's go back. Can you go back to your? Sorry, I know I'm like at time, but
Yeah.
I do kind of want to fix this real quick.
Mhm.
Can you go back to your template file?
You got.
And let's see. Let's what did I want to do? Oh, are you familiar with JavaScript front matter?
Not extremely. I don't think I've like
Okay,
personally
yeah.
played around with
Just go to that triple dash at the top and put JS.
it. Okay. And everything in
And
here
then-
has to be an object, right? Like I'm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess probably just recreate this. Do I have to use like string literal around the keys, or is it like JavaScript JSON?
Yeah, I don't think it requires JSON specifically, but I'm not 100% sure. I
Let's
think
find
this
out.
is fine.
All right, so there's this. Port this over, and then 11D computed. All right, and then
I mean, you should be able to copy those lines wholesale and then just put a
oh yeah,
comma.
this is basically JSON. Just need to ooh, add me some commas here and here. That should do it. And then, did you want to do the ratio in a different way, like as a function?
Yeah, so, yep, let's create a function for that instead. Just kind of really curious if this will work.
Okay.
And so you'll want,
Do you want me to just nuke that?
now I'm really curious if you can use filters inside of this function.
How would I get to it? Would it be globally available? Like, would I be able to do color contrast? Like that?
Well, it wouldn't be global. It might be on this, but I am not super confident about that all of a sudden.
Let me go to the docs. Let's find this out. Because I think you've got would be in front matters somewhere. Where's front matter data? Probably JS in here. Here's JSON front matter. Here's JavaScript front matter. Okay. It doesn't seem to suggest anything about using filters.
Yeah, I'm not super confident that you can do that.
Yes.
But if you look in the docs, it would probably be in the computed data section.
Oh, okay, got it.
Uh,
Computed data.
some filters mentioned on computed data docs at all. Just running into all kinds of interesting issues.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing comes down to we're trying to put everything into computed data, and we don't necessarily need to do that, but we're really trying to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have given up on that for the ratio a long time ago.
Makes sense.
Because, yeah, maybe we should just move to use the ratio inside of the template body instead.
Yeah. Then in that
But
case, I'm
you
gonna
can leave all that stuff as is.
Gonna unJSify this. I think then.
Okay.
Keep it how I had it. I think that's it, and then nuke this. I think it may still give us issues. Ooh, that's nested braces. It may still give us issues on the build. Let's find out. Let me run, clear that, and run a build. Yeah. Oh, that's probably didn't clean up my front matter just right. I think I did.
Oh, you have JS in your.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Good catch. All right. Now we build. Oh, okay. It's running. It's building successfully. Got it. So the problem there was that we were trying to do it in computed, and interesting.
Yeah, that was yep, that was sort of I don't know. I would say that filters in computed data are probably not technically supported right now after seeing that.
Relate ratios on demand. Push that up, and then I guess, and I know you've got to hop out, so if you need to, feel free. But I think the next step is probably I'm just gonna try to get this up on Netlify real quick.
Yeah, let's just try and deploy it and see what happens.
Yeah, Netlify net. Ooh, okay. New site. my team. I'm gonna call this Eleventy Serverless color contrast. That's probably not taken yet. Here's hoping I haven't given away any secrets. I don't think the site ID is a secret.
Nope, that's fine.
Oh, it's complaining because I'm on an organization's repo and not my own project. Let me, I guess, just do this in Netlify. All right. Point this to a different repo. Build and deploy. Link site to Git. GitHub. Antics. Then it should find. There we go. Main.
I love that name, Semantics.
Thank you. I consider myself a pun-driven developer. So I came up with the name. I'm like, shoot, this is a really good name. I have to do something with this, and that's the impetus that got me into streaming. So, it's funny. I was on Jason's show the other day, and there was just a moment in the chat where like someone realized like, oh, it's like semantic markup, and just instantly the chat started going like, oh, it's like the moment that clicks. Yeah. Okay, so it should be deploying that now. Let's see. Oh, it failed.
Uh-oh.
Failing for a predictable reason. Oh, my source data and includes are empty. Let me just stick a. I think there's like an official like Git convention for empty files, but I'm just gonna do a please have stuff, please, and then I don't know if doing anything like this will.
It's like get keep.
Oh, is that what it's called? I think it is get keep, isn't it? Yeah. All right. All right. Let's see. I don't know if there needs to be anything else in there, but let's try this now. Why is my Netlify is doing stuff with the git ignore. That's right. Let's see, and I will. Here's hoping. Fingers crossed. We can build an Eleventy site.
You are truly the canary in the coal mine right now.
Well, I mean, it's a fun place to be. I'm seriously so grateful that you've hopped on for this. Especially on such short notice. Yeah, likewise. Oh, looks like we're live. Let's preview. This is gonna give me the hash URL. Yeah. But I can just go there. So that's fine. This is still gonna break. Also fine. But if I now do a whole bunch of Fs, and for this one I'll do some 3s, and then add a trailing slash, we've got a ratio. It works. Nice. And because it's all cached, we can see the times, right? So I think I can go into the network tab and see how long these things take. So I'm gonna choose white. Yeah, that's 6 of them. So why is it not? Oh, hang on. There we go. Got it. So that took, where does it say how long it takes? It would be somewhere in here, right? I feel like.
I think if you, there's right like here. A timing tab.
Oh, is there?
Also.
Timing, yes. It took 617 milliseconds. But if I refresh this, Netlify should have this cached. So it's not going to take 617 milliseconds, right? It's going to take...
Yeah, and 600 milliseconds seems like a lot to me also.
Yeah, but this is 123 milliseconds, so it's cached. It's way faster. Yeah, and there is the graph up here too. So, and every time I load this going forward, it should. Yeah, it's on the order of like 120 to 150, which is much faster. So, that's awesome. I'm gonna stick this link in the chat for folks, but I think that's probably it. And I know you've got a little time. I guess just real quickly, how wild do you expect people are going to get with Eleventy Serverless? Like, what are some things that you envision that this is going to open up for people?
I mean, there is just like a ton of things that basically, like, I don't even know. It's gonna be a little bit scary, I think,
Okay.
depending on how often people use this on request model.
Okay.
I'm a little nervous about it, to be honest, because if everyone really dives in deep into this to using on request instead of these on demand builders, um, it could result in slower sites, which is not what I want to happen. So the more people sort of dip their toes into these like dynamic use cases, it really creates some more risk for your site. And that's kind of like what the original like argument for Jamstack was, right? You're doing as much as you can in the upfront build, reduces your risk, improves your visitor experience because things are faster. So, I mean, it is going to open up some more use cases, especially around like content personalization and CMS previews is another one I've used it for.
Okay.
And that's, I would say CMS previews, I've used the on request mode for that. And that's just a little bit safer because it's not like a public facing thing. It's like you're in an admin panel and you're looking at your site, your like drafts in your CMS. You want to see live previews of those. So it's not like it's the homepage of eleventy.dev, for example, that's running on request mode as it is right now and has been all day. Yeah, it's riskier to run a site in that mode. So I would say I would recommend to people just use on-demand builders when you can, and even that. So I'm just gonna keep going on this. So I would say just prefer the default mode, which is the static site generator. Use the build time for as long as you can. When you run into problems, switch to on-demand builders and sort of opt into that mode when you need to solve those problems. And if you need these like more dynamic use cases, especially for things like CMS previews, then you can look at the on request mode too. But I would say, yeah, just keep the default as is. Don't use the plugin unless you need it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Zach, and chat. Thank you all for hopping on as well. Especially with so little notice. Speaking of notice, y'all should know that next Tuesday, 12 p.m. Central, I've got Alex Anderson coming on. We're gonna be adding like screen reader support and keyboard navigability to 3D games built with web tech. So I'm pretty excited for that one. That is a space I know nothing about. Is like how do you make that kind of stuff work for like 3D games and such. So I'm excited to learn more, and I hope y'all will join me as well. But with that, I think I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. So thank you all, and thank you, Zach, so much.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Bye.